In the industry at the moment, there's a number of organizations that are doing cloud-based secure anti-ransomware backup solutions. Why isn't that sufficient for companies? Why do they need something like DPRM if that's what they've already put in place?
Because when you start looking at ransomware, the technology behind what's being put in place, it's about how can we take a snapshot and store that in a cloud location so that we can recover as quickly as possible. Now, that sounds good in theory. However, we're now seeing that there's two additional issues that could happen from that. The first one being, how do we ensure that the data being backed up to the cloud is not compromised in transit? So between the data center and the cloud instance. The second point is that, well, why does the bad actor now need to go after the active environment if there's a backup that sits within a cloud backup location? Sure, the bad actor can now go to that cloud location, can look to exfiltrate data from that point, and then has that sensitive data. So we're now looking at DPRM as a way of protecting against those new threats that have arisen from the attempt to protect against ransomware. So with DPRM, what we can do is we can ensure that the data backed up between the data center and the cloud location is not tampered with. So the fact that the data owner has put a control in place where they own the policy, they own the keys that is responsible for the protection of the data as it flows between the data center and the cloud location. But also in the knowledge that with the same control, if a bad actor were to go after the backup location, any data that's exfiltrated will pass through a protection point where the data is protected using a key and a policy that only the data owner has access to. That data that then gets diverted to the bad actor or exfiltrated is in a form where it's rendered useless. So the data owner, whilst it's uncomfortable in the knowledge that data has ended up in the hands of a bad actor, they can be comfortable in the fact that only they have access to the keys that's protecting their data, and therefore the data remains sovereign to the data owner rather than the bad actor being able to gain access to that backed up or that exfiltrated data.
Yeah, I think that's key because we know that a data breach is an inevitability. It's going to happen.
Absolutely.
So data will be extracted. The penalties that any regulator can bring will be if that data is made available to a third party. If the organization has protected that data with something like DPRM, yes, it'll be extracted, but it'll be extracted in a form that is unreadable or useless or valueless to the attacker. They can also answer the question to the regulator of no data was made available to a third party. All of my data was protected. As you say, the data was sovereign to the organization and the data owners themselves. So while we talk about security being a many-layered item, peeling back the layers of the onion, if you like, the cloud-based anti-ransomware protection, absolutely required. The AI analytics to monitor what's going on the internet and where the new threats are coming from, absolutely required. But fundamentally, the attackers are after the data.
Yes.
So we need to protect that data before it gets to that point. And there's no one organization that owns every single segment of network data infrastructure from point A to point B around the globe, because data can go anywhere. It can flow anywhere over any form of network. The only thing that's constant is the data. So DPRM very simply focuses on protecting that one constant in the whole journey, and that's the data itself.
And I think that's really important to note that when we start looking at the security industry, the infrastructure security industry at the moment, what we can see is that all of the controls are reactive. What they look at is how can I best understand either what has happened or the likelihood of something happening, so that should it happen, I can best react and therefore cut down the time of impact. So what we're doing with DPRM and wrapping the data with security that only the data owner has access to, we have now fully put in place a proactive control that means that when infrastructure controls inevitably do fail, then we know that that data is protected, again, according to a policy that the data owner defines, using a key that only they have access to. So now I've got across all of my security controls, my infrastructure controls, I've got a broad data security control that should one of my infrastructure controls fail, I know that even if my data ends up in the hands of a bad actor through things like exfiltration, I know that my data's in a form where it's rendered useless through the use of strong cryptography, but with the knowledge that only the data owner has access to the keys protecting that data. So again, ensuring data sovereignty, even when the data isn't in the hands of the data owner, it's in the hands of a bad actor.